Okay. So I'm gonna be vlogging. This is a vlog. Um, Here's my big update. I just learned that I have abandonment issues, and they're pretty bad. I have abandonment issues that started in my early childhood. So that's pretty bad. It's kind of cooked. It's not cooked, but it's like my life would be so different if I didn't have these issues. And so I watched a video on this. I've watched a couple videos on this, but in one of the videos that I watched on abandonment issues, apparently one of the best ways to combat abandonment issues is recognizing what compulsive behaviors you participate in, and then trying to fix those compulsive behaviors, just like over time, so that eventually you stop compulsively participating in these behaviors that are harmful for you. So here's a short list of the compulsive behaviors that were mentioned, and I related to them. I related to all the compulsive behaviors that this person in the YouTube video that I watched mentioned. So I participate in compulsive shame, compulsive caretaking. There are 10 altogether, I believe. Compulsive self-reliance, compulsive numbing, compulsive perfectionism, compulsively choosing unavailable people, compulsive disassociation and maladaptive disorders, and compulsively distrusting others. Also, I participate in compulsive dysregulation and compulsive hypervigilance. So I'll go through each one and kind of explain like how I relate to these things. So first, compulsive shame, which is when you compulsively go into situations thinking that you're not enough, you're not lovable, and there's something wrong with you. I specifically relate to there's something wrong with me in every single situation I go into. I just think there's something wrong with me, period. Now, low key, I wasn't wrong, because now I know what it is. It's abandonment. The fuck? But like, yeah, I just always think that I am not lovable and I'm not enough. That's something that I kind of always struggle with. It's interesting now to know that it's rooted in my abandonment fears. I think I'm not enough, and I think that's why I was abandoned. Like, that's something I believe internally, that I've internalized. Compulsive caretaking is the next one. I feel like if you know me, you know that I do this. Maybe, you know, like, I show more for some people than other people, but like, I am just someone who will compulsively take care of others. And it's not like a motherly instinct, it's not something I do out of compassion. It's something that I do to distract myself. As horrible as that sounds, like, I compulsively caretake. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've always found someone or something to take care of, to avoid my own, like, just like being alone with myself in a way, or like being alone. Like in the video, she said it was to avoid the pain of your own self-abandonment. So, by having abandonment fears, I've already abandoned myself to try and be perfect and receive the love that I never received in childhood. That's kind of like what abandonment fears are. It's you consistently abandoning yourself over and over again. I hate the word abandoning. It's so hard to say. So I need to say no to caretaking. And to say no to compulsive shame, the one before, I need to refocus my energy from looking to not be abandoned to instead growing my sense of self and not abandoning myself. And it's like a whole change that is going to be very hard to achieve, honestly. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. Compulsive shame and compulsive caretaking. Now we're going to move on to compulsive self-reliance. I relate so heavily to this one, like right off the bat. I feel like I need to be self-reliant. Let's see. Yeah, like, these are feelings like you're only safe when you're alone. Like, I have internalized that. My body is only mine when I have absolute control over it, and I just have all these boundaries that I put around things, so that everything is my control. I have self-reliance to the ultimate extent, etc. How I heal this tendency, this compulsive tendency, all these behaviors are compulsive. I think one of the reasons that I found this so hard to fucking deal with and like identify is that these are things that I do without even thinking about this. This is just the way I'm wired. I am wired to be self-reliant. I am wired to compulsively caretake. I am wired to feel this huge sense of internal shame towards myself. I am wired for these things. Like, this is a part of me. This has been a part of me for, honestly, as long as I can fucking remember. I literally don't know anything else. I don't know what it feels like to not want to compulsively caretake and take care of someone just to distract you from your, like, the pain of just existing in your body, and like, I don't even know what that feels like to not want to do that. So these are all compulsive things. I feel compulsively self-reliant, and so to reverse that process, to heal, I need to try asking for help. Little by little, I need to let people into my life get closer to me and be more vulnerable with people, even though I'm super uncomfortable with it. And I just also need to communicate my emotions and feelings with other people. These are not my burden to bear. Like, this isn't my cross to carry. We're all human, and that includes me. So yeah. Okay, moving on to number 4, compulsive numbing. This means that, like, you can't relax without like a stimulant of some sort, like, or some sort of like stimulation. So like watching TV. I did a lot of that as a kid. Or just like, you have all these coping mechanisms that you just kind of develop to numb the pain that you feel, and I definitely do that. Compulsive perfectionism. It's not like, oh, I want to be perfect at this. I don't even ask that question. The standard is perfectionism, and so I automatically set myself for failure in everything I try and do. That's just something I do. I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna like study for like 3 hours every day, and I'll literally convince myself that that's what I need to do in order to survive, and then I won't do that, and I'll just like sit in that guilt and shame, and it kind of feels good to sit in guilt and shame and not do anything, and while also maintaining these really high expectations for yourself. The reason that people with abandonment disorders do this, apparently, is like but if I'm perfect, this time I won't be abandoned. It's the idea that at some point in your life, you were abandoned, you had to abandon yourself in order to try and get the care that you deserve. Of course, abandoning yourself might protect you in the moment because it dissociates you, like, and draws like a boundary between like yourself and the pain that you've experienced. But at the same time, it's like, even if I am perfect, right? This is something weird for me to think about. But even if I am perfect, that doesn't mean that I'm lovable. That doesn't mean that like I won't be abandoned. And I think this is a hard realization for me to even rationally comprehend. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird. So compulsive perfectionism, and then number 6 is going to be compulsively choosing unlovable people. So I do just feel like I'm drawn to people who I want to take care of them. That's just kind of how I'm wired. Taking care of people is how I show love oftentimes, and so I'm drawn to people who I feel like need to be taken care of. So that's kind of my synthesis of that one. Compulsive dissociation and maladaptive disorders. I don't know what maladaptive disorders are, but I do know what compulsive dissociation is because this is something I literally experience like all the fucking time. I've experienced this ever since I was like 5. Maybe even younger, like who knows. When I was in preschool, I remember trying to tell my friend, Marty, shout out Marty, that I just like pace in my room for hours on end and imagine things. And my question to him was gonna be like, oh, do you do this too? Like, is this a normal thing for me to be doing? Like, even at 5 years old, it felt kind of weird that I was doing this. Like, I would just fantasize endlessly. Like, I had the most active imagination. I still do have an active imagination. But like, from age like 5 to age like 15, that whole time, like, I would probably, like, it was very common for me to spend 3 to 5 to 6 hours in my room pacing back and forth, just imagining things. It's this form of escapism that people with abandonment disorder sometimes do, just to escape the pain that they're in. And oftentimes, we allow ourselves to think things that we kind of wish we felt. So when I was like imagining all these like fantasy scenarios of just like, it was like really imaginative stuff. It was like, oh, it would be so cool if like I was like in a UFO or something and we like just travel the world. Like, it was like, you know, fantasy stuff. But like in all of these fantasies, I would think about the love that I wish I felt. And I would think about, oh, I wish I felt like this like sense of like belonging. I wish I felt this sense of like I wish I was able to live life without fear. And that's like literally what I imagined. But I didn't let my body feel those experiences, so I had to imagine it. So that's how it was explained to me in this like video that I watched. And that really just like hit home for me. Like, I believe that. It's crazy. So that's compulsive dissociation. Now we're moving on to compulsively distrusting others. Before I meet someone, I automatically don't trust them. If you are in my life, I just can't trust you. If you are in my life, if there is something in my life that I can identify, I am going to be like afraid of that thing or that person. So if you are in my life, I am afraid of you. That's just how I operate. There's no amount of reassurance that can like reassure me. There's nothing that can be done to make me feel like the things and people in my life aren't at some point going to turn on me and hurt me and abandon me. That's just how I feel about everything. And obviously it's hard to live like that. Like, I've noticed how hard it is to live like that. But there's nothing I can, you know, without having recognized that, oh, this all stems from an abandonment disorder, and then like therapizing myself and like working through all that shit. There was really no way for me to even, this irrational fear that I have of abandonment was, I suppose, at one point rational. And I don't know, I'm still processing it, obviously. This isn't gonna be like a clean video of like, these are the things that like I know for a fact about myself. But this is more of just like me exploring on camera these really like disturbing things about abandonment disorders that I heavily relate to on a deeply personal level. So I don't know, I'm still thinking through the ways that I distrust other people. But I can tell you for a fact that I do it compulsively. Like, these are all compulsive things that I do. I distrust someone just like, there's no basis for distrust. The distrust is within me. I distrust myself, honestly. That's the basis for all this. Like, I don't even trust myself. So I'm not going to begin to trust other people. That's kind of like the vibe. This is a really interesting one that I'm like thinking so much about right now. Like, so it's called compulsive self-dysregulation. And you might be like, well, what the fuck is that? Like, that literally doesn't even have a noun. But it's when like childhood emotions, my childhood emotions as someone with abandonment disorder, never got the time. Like, there was never a time in my life where I learned how to regulate my emotions. That's something that's just lacking from my childhood and therefore lacking from my adult life. People with abandonment disorders, especially with abandonment disorders that stem from trauma, I have no idea where my abandonment disorders stem from. Both of my parents were pretty present in my life. They had their issues, but I'm thinking that it's probably some trauma that I've repressed. That's kind of what like I feel like my childhood and my situation is giving. So I don't know, but I have no idea what that trauma is. I literally can't remember it. I also don't want to if I'm not ready for it, because I feel like it's probably gonna be pretty powerful, like that whole process. So yeah. So when I was a kid, emotions would just pop up. Like, I relate to this so fucking heavily. Like, emotions didn't make sense to me. I would just kind of like, I was a very like daydreamy kid. I was very quiet. I would just like kind of like daydream and not think about like, you know, I thought dinosaurs were cool and stuff like that, but like I wouldn't like I had a little bit of a personality, but like my emotions, there was never a time where emotions made sense to me as a person, honestly. Because the way I was explained to it to this YouTube video is, when you have these abandonment fears from a young age, your entire nervous system, all of your efforts, all of your life energy, you just are 100% committed to surviving. And survival for you at that young age means that like emotions are just not processed like they are in other people who don't have abandonment issues. So I heavily also related to this. People with abandonment issues don't know how to feel contained and regulated. And like, if you have abandonment issues, it's my hypothesis that like you will also relate so fucking heavily to those two words, contained and regulated. my emotions have never been contained or regulated. That doesn't mean that like I'm all over the place. That means that I literally like my sense of self, my sense of like emotional engagement with the world has just never really existed. Like I just relate so heavily to like contained and regulated. I've never felt contained. I've never felt regulated. It's always just kind of been like too much to handle and confusing. Emotions have always been confusing to me. Bro, I don't know what's going on in the hallway. This one seems like it's hard to heal, but there are ways to do it. Guided meditation, breathing techniques, just stopping what you're doing sometimes and resting for 15 minutes, just listening to music, just so like the internal noise in my head can like go to a lower volume. Like my brain just feels so noisy all the time. Okay, last one, compulsive hypervigilance. I'm always reading people. I'm always scanning for danger. It's literally a reflex for me. I can't not do that. I'm just in this like danger kind of mindset, and it's really exhausting. It always has been. I feel like it's gotten worse with just like me recognizing that I am transgender, because like whenever I'm interacting with people for the past couple of years, I'm just analyzing them so hard, like their social expressions, like their facial expressions, social cues, etc. I'm analyzing literally everything I can get like my little hands on, and I just feel so helpless to overanalyze. I'm wondering, like I can tell off the bat whether someone thinks I pass or not. I feel like I'm really good at reading people because of this. Like I'm able to like get the vibes, you know. I'm always looking for other people to make me feel safe, even though that's something I literally have cut myself off from feeling. It's so complicated. But I'm hypervigilant. I'm always scanning. It's a reflex. I live in a chronic state of fear, and so I'm always looking for danger. That's basically what it is. Like that's what it boils down to. One thing that really stuck out to me in this video is like she was like speaking directly to the audience. It felt like she was speaking directly to me when she said this. Like, you did the best you could. Like, you survived. Whatever the situation is that made you have abandonment fears, you survived, and you did the best that you could. You didn't have a lot of tools at that time to help you. You didn't have emotional regulation. You didn't have like so many things just weren't developed at that time. And so you worked with the few resources you had, and you survived whatever that traumatic moment is in your life. And I don't know, there's definitely something there. Like that hit me really hard. Because I just always feel like I'm not enough. And to know that, you know, when I was a young kid, and I was put in like this survival situation, the survival mode, whatever put me in the survival mode, I got through it. And that's all my body needed me to do. I am here right now. I am alive right now. And in part, it's because I did what I had to do as a kid to survive whatever fucked up situation I was in. And that's just like, that's hard, you know? And so I have to reshift my focus. My focus right now, as it has been for the past decade and a half, is an over-focus on others abandoning me. The real fear, what I should be afraid of, is me abandoning myself, because I do it every day of every second. Every time I commit one of these compulsive things that I just learned how to do, every time I do like one of these like compulsive trauma responses, I'm hurting myself by abandoning myself. And that's where the biggest wound is for me, in my self-abandonment. So, yeah, like this is still a lot to process. I just feel like I feel kind of like helpless, honestly. It feels good to process. It feels good to like have words to all of these really complex feelings that I've been experiencing for so long, that in the back of my head, I've known that they're not normal, because I've seen other people operate in the world where they're just like, they're not worried about the same things I am. Like, oh, what do you mean you don't have an escape suitcase packed at all times? Like, that's not normal. Oh, like, what do you mean, like, you literally are so afraid of vulnerability that your entire life becomes a trauma response? Like, what do you mean you're not in a constant state of fear? Like, in the back of my head, I've been like watching people who are different than me, like who don't have this abandonment issues, and I just see how like their life is so free compared to mine. Like, I feel like my life is not free. Like, I have to work for it. Like, I am constantly planning for the future. I am constantly assuming the worst. I am constantly like focusing on the most negative things in my life and trying to protect myself from them. That's what my entire life is. Like, I am so defined by my fear. My fear is literally like, my fear for like self-preservation is the driving force in everything that I do. I've never had like a relaxed moment where fear wasn't in like the back of my mind. And hopefully I get to a point where I can say like, oh, I'm not driven by fear. I'm actually able to relax. I'm just hoping that'll be the case, that I'll actually be able to like feel emotions, practice emotional regulation. I just want to be normal, girl. Like, I really do. Like, I don't want to live life on hard mode. I don't want to live life in survival mode. I obviously don't need to. Like, rationally, I can recognize. I mean, it's like an underlying psychological issue. So even if I rationally recognize something, that doesn't mean that like I feel safe. But I can rationally recognize that I am safe right now. Like, you know, I'm pretty well off. Like, I got this fucking room. I'm not fucking sick right now. No one's trying to kill me. Like, those are great, amazing things. But I still do feel scared. And even the idea that there will be a time when I don't feel scared for my life at all times is like alien to me. I can't imagine what that's going to feel like. I think it'll feel good, but I like literally can't imagine it. It's just really scary for me, honestly. And of course, like, the hard thing about this too is I have no idea where this comes from. I both of my parents continue to be present in my life. Like there was never like a gap year where like I didn't see a parent for like a long time, or something happened and I was abandoned in some way, shape, or form. Like I literally can't pinpoint a moment where my parents abandoned me. That I'm recognizing that that could be just because I'm so blind to these things. Like I'm just realizing I have abandonment issues now, and I'm 21 years old, and I've had abandonment issues since like age 5 at least. You know, so I recognize that I'm maybe not the most like um, reliable narrator of my own life. Like I recognize that maybe my parents are neglectful or abusive in some underlying way that I'm just like not picking up on. I think that's possible. I also think what's potentially more possible is that I have repressed trauma. Um, I feel like it could be giving SA trauma. I have no idea what trauma I could have experienced. I don't. When I think of my childhood, I don't think of trauma. Like I don't think that my childhood was extremely traumatic, but apparently it was traumatic enough to make me have these like pretty underlying issues. So I don't know. I'm also scared. Like let's say I do have SA trauma from like when I was a really young kid. Like that has to be messy. That has to be like just really. That's gonna be like fucking gut wrenching to remember. Like that's gonna be some of the most painful shit I might ever experience in this life. And I recognize that. Like SA trauma from childhood, it can just fuck so many people up. Like I'm very aware that like if my mind is repressing some memories for me, it's repressing them for a reason. So I'm scared to like open up that box, you know? And I don't think I need to open that box up right now. I think in the future, you know, to work through my trauma, I might at some point have to access it. But I don't think that point is right now. And I think the most important thing for me to do right now is to practice all these healing techniques for these different compulsive disorders. Like I need to learn nervous system regulation. I need to learn emotional regulation. I need to construct the sense of self that I never got to create as a child, so I feel contained as a person, so that I feel regulated as a person. Like, it's crazy how people take for granted some of these core feelings that they have just about themselves. Like, if you have a strong sense of self, you feel contained, like you don't always have to escape from yourself, if you feel like you don't have to abandon yourself, good for you. I could never. I just find it so amazing that people are able to just live their lives because they didn't experience, like, abandonment, and they don't actively experience abandonment in their everyday life. Like, wow. Like, that's crazy. I think I'm recognizing just how far-reaching this realization is. Like, this is a big realization for me because it affects so many different parts of my life. I understand why I can't keep my room clean now. Like, it's because I'm always kind of on edge. Like, keeping my room clean is never a priority because I'm always thinking, like, oh, well, what if I have to leave my room? Like, my room isn't stable. I have to make myself stable. Like, I can't even focus on my room right now. I have to be the number one priority. Like, I just see things so differently than people without abandonment issues. And I'm realizing that. Like, I'm realizing that to its fullest extent now. I think the craziest part about this whole thing for me is that I've never known anything else. How do you heal from something that is just your life experience? Like, I have my entire childhood, in a lot of ways, has been a trauma response. To what? I don't know. But like, these abandonment issues, this is all a huge trauma response. I do so many different trauma responses every day. And I'm 21 years old and I've been doing this for a long time. So it's like, I do feel sad in a way. Like I think this is a sad thing. I don't necessarily feel sad about this, but I think it's sad that I haven't felt a sense of safety for a long ass time. And it's really just affected me. I built a whole trauma personality around it. I built my entire like life from like, it's like my life is a trauma informed response. And I think that's sad because it's like, you know, my life could have been so much more positive, so much more happier if I didn't have these abandonment issues. And knowing now that I'm going to have to be working through these abandonment issues probably for the rest of my life, not that, like, I think from here till 3 years down the road, if everything goes okay, I think I can be in a much better place emotionally, just like in all aspects of my life. I do believe in change, but I also do believe when professionals tell me that this is a lifelong journey. Like, abandonment issues need to be worked through again and again and again, over and over and over. And I always just, by living, run the risk of, like, getting triggered and these issues coming back up again, and I go back into my compulsive behaviors, and I have to recognize that, and I have to be very self-aware. More self-aware than, like, think about how self-aware I have to be. Like, it's crazy for me to think about, like, okay, I've been living my whole life in, like, this blue light, and now I need to see, like, all the colors. Like, I have to stop being defined by fear. And that's, like, a huge, like, mental breakthrough for me. Because I don't know what not feeling afraid feels like. It's literally worked into my body, is what they're telling me. Like, people say that trauma and abandonment issues and this, like, nervous system regulation, like, this is, like, literally, like, in my nerves, in my actual body right now. And I need to work it out. I'm just so starstruck. I'm also hungry. It's just crazy learning all these things about myself. And it is a little scary, but it's also very cathartic to have words to describe my unique experiences that apparently aren't so as unique as I thought they were. It's nice to not feel alone in this struggle. Like, lots of people have abandonment issues, and that means that there's a lot of professionals out there that I can hopefully get help from, and there's a lot of online resources that I can access. So in some ways, I'm more hopeful than I've ever been before. In other ways, I'm more scared than I've ever been before. And right now, I think my body's just trying to recognize those two, this feeling of fear and this feeling of hope, and it's trying to reconcile those two things. Well, that was my obsession. Stretching feels so good. Yeah, thank you.